All right. Welcome to Free Kicks and a special portion of our Free Kicks podcast. I'm here with DSA Labs, Doug Oppenheimer and Dr. John Nichols, Director of Analytics, and Doug is the Director of Coaching and Player Development. And we're just talking a little bit about their company, how they work within Illinois Youth Soccer, and how things are going for them. So I want to just kind of throw it over as a quick question just to kind of get us going. Doug and John certainly share the wealth in terms of information, but how did DSA Labs start and where are you going?
Several years ago, John and I were coaching together, an elite club girls team. And I had been spending a lot of time with Anson Dorrance and Gino Oriama up at UConn and Scott Fry at Messiah. And I was trying to figure out what makes these coaches win. Like, what is it? Culture? Is it all? What variables are in there? And the one connection I made between Gino and Anson is that they measure everything in practice. And we realized that those coaches are kind of, especially Anson, they sort of want the alphas on top of the ranking system, because they measure the players and then rank them, and they use that to drive the motivation for the players to get better. And I asked John, instead of could we actually measure true performance of an athlete? And we knew that certain organizations were throwing on catapult player maker systems on players, capturing their heart rate, and they call it performance. But could you actually capture the ability of a player to shoot, pass, dribble, press, etc.?
Mm-hmm.
And so I asked John if we could do that. And John said, let me think about it, because it's a lot of different data sets. And he came back a week later and was like, I've got it. I know how to do it. And he said, what's your first question? I was with U13. I was like, let's do 1v1s. And that's where we began.
Yeah.
John, would you agree?
Yeah, no, that was exactly it. We were aware that analytics was kind of taking over other sports, and I think the reason soccer was struggling, at least in our opinion, was that it's a free flowing game. It's very hard to put numbers on things like a player's ability to make a decision or communicate, and so that's what we set out to do, was to try to bring analytics to soccer and correct some of those deficiencies, at least what we saw as deficiencies. So
yeah, no, that's great. I mean, I'm looking at your mission. I love the three things you talk about, and maybe if there's something that sticks out for you out of these three things: replacing the coach's clipboard obviously is one, turning the data into decisions, and then prioritizing player development. Is there one thing that you probably thought this was the golden egg that I need to really stick on in terms of that mission?
yeah, I mean, well, okay, so from my perspective, I was most interested in answering questions that coaches really cared about. How do I choose a lineup? Which players work best together?
Yeah.
Who's my best decision maker? Those kinds of things. So it's kind of number two on that list, was the one that I really wanted to tackle with the analytics. And then the more we got into it, talking with coaches like you and club managers, the more we realized, there was a lot more to thinking about and organizing and removing inefficiencies in soccer. And so that's where kind of those other two items came from.
Got it. That's great. So how does it actually work? I know obviously I'm pretty familiar with the process in terms of kind of creating stats. I don't know, maybe Doug, you can talk a little bit about kind of how does it actually work? How would a coach go about working through this system to create stats to then be able to have some type of a readout at the end of a training session?
So, I think the general idea is that StatLink is a tool that captures, aggregates, and visualizes player metrics. And it's a software, it's web-based, and it uses an understandable algorithm for ranking players, predicting athletic ability, and giving actionable insights into both your players and your team. And all you need is an iPhone, an iPad, or a desktop computer, and you can access StatLink's easy and intuitive data entry system that we've created, or you could take data from other sources, which we have coaches using like Opta and InGen and other data sources, but they only use a few metrics from these huge reports they get. And it's basically a warehouse for your data, and it aggregates it and then ranks your players, from top to bottom in each of the categories that you want to measure. So we've made it really, really intuitive and very easy, because sometimes, for example, I can sit at half field I was working with an elite Division I team, and I was sitting at half field measuring the decision-making of the players on my iPhone. And once I hit finish on our easy entry system, as I'm going, and we made it so intuitive and quick that I can actually follow the decisions of the different players, hit finish, wraps up, and instantaneously ranks players top to bottom.
That's great. That's great. Yeah. So it really gives us a good understanding of kind of where the player is in terms of that moment. So obviously it's very objective. So then that way we can come away, and then also maybe talk a little bit about how the player is able to see it, because that's also another part of it. So not only does the coach see it, but the player sees it as well.
Yeah, and to piggyback a little bit and then go to the player side, we're agnostic in the sense that we allow coaches to measure what they want and how they want to measure it. Like, that's huge, because coaches have different tactics, different values, different philosophies, so they can capture whatever they want on this system. But what I think is the most revolutionary idea is that the data can be shared with the players through an evaluation card we call the flash stat. And this digital report card not only houses player data, but also their highlight videos, their biography, etc. And this player flash stat will then follow them for their career, so that they can, in essence, build a resume. And then this resume can be at any time shared with scouts, college coaches, social media, etc. And as we get further into this recruitment process, we're realizing, coaches are evaluating players in notebooks. Our system allows you to actually measure the performance of a player in any way you want to, but also take notes in it and wrap it up. And you could create your team of recruits and rank them from top to bottom.
That's great. So yeah, so there's definitely a way of this information following with the player, and like you said, it can then be utilized as they're looking potentially for colleges, professional contracts, whatever it may be. So that's the exciting thing.
Yeah, it's an organization system that's needed, and I went on a webinar for recruitment, college recruitment this past week, and the coaches are, they agreed that they're very subjective. They rate a player, take notes, but that a lot of the emails they get from players, it's all over the place. Like, they get highlight video here, a bio later. This houses all of it in one place. And the beauty of it is it's a URL. Yeah. When you go back into it, it's already updated. So as a player's data updates and they update their highlight videos or anything, you can go back into the player and it's all there, organized and up to date.
Awesome. That's really good.
Yeah. And so going back to your comment on our multiple mission statement, it did start out as kind of mostly about the numbers and the analytics. And as Doug said, the more we do this, the more we realize it's almost as much about organizing and allowing people to share information quickly about players, that's almost every bit as valuable as the numbers themselves. That's
true. So John, what do you see in terms of, as the director of analytics, what do you see coming down the road? What are you're constantly working on things. I know in my discussions with Doug, there's always things happening and changing. What do you foresee as maybe some things that you're going to be adding to StatLink?
Yeah, I think one of the things that Doug got me going on a ways back was this concept of assessing which groups of players tend to work better together when we're in the field, right? So as you're choosing a lineup and you're trying to put certain players near each other, it's very definitely the case that certain players they seem to communicate with each other better, interact better. And so trying to capture that in the data, and then find an easy way to convey that to a coach, right?
Mhm.
To say, hey, if you've got this player out on the wing, this is the back you want behind them, because they're able to build out of the back great together,
Yeah.
right? You
Yeah.
put two other players back there, it's not as good. So analytically, that's a challenge. I think we've got that worked out. And the other part of the challenge then is, okay, how do I convey this in a simple way for a coach? But I think that player compatibility, I think, is a big deal, and something we're anxious to
Right.
formally build into the system.
Awesome. Yeah, definitely the compatibility. And then we talk about relationships, which is a kind of a good lead into kind of the last part here that I wanted to talk about, is the relationship that Illinois Youth Soccer has with DSA Labs. So obviously we've been utilizing it within our ODP program. We're still working through it. And I know we've got a lot of good feedback, especially from the coaches, parents, and information. So maybe Doug, if you could talk a little bit about our relationship with Illinois Youth Soccer and DSA Labs.
Yeah, our relationship with Illinois Youth Soccer, you guys are on the forefront. You guys see the revolution coming. You understand, like, what I've found, you're progressive in all the different areas. You take all the players into your pool. There's no first or second team and cuts. You understand the idea of development, of communication with the parents, and that the data is used to tell a player, hey, look, your decision making was lower this session. And it's already created that communication of the player and the parents with the coaches, and it's increased it, is from what I've seen.
Mhm.
And you get it. And that's what is so important with this whole data revolution. And we say predictive versus descriptive analytics. A lot of analytics going on out there are descriptive, and this is but much more predictive. And you get that. Like, I really want to measure the true performance of our players. Like, instead of how many crosses did the player, I want to sit and look and grade each of the crosses. And it becomes more about their performance rather than just, oh, they had 6 crosses.
Yeah.
And you guys get that, and that you're sort of on that edge looking to the future.
No, that's awesome. Yeah. And like I said, we've got 1,200 kids in our program. They've all got profiles. They're all on their own individual journey. They now have this to follow. So this is really exciting. So really appreciate both of you jumping on today in terms of information. How can people find out more information about DSA Labs, and how can they contact you if maybe their organization wants to get involved?
Yeah, I mean, perhaps the simplest way is just the website, dsa-labs.com. And I think everything you need's on there. We're on Facebook, Instagram, every other kind of social media platform. But I would start with the webpage, and all the contacts are right there.
Awesome. Appreciate it. Thanks very much for both of you jumping on today. We're really excited at Illinois Youth Soccer to continue working with you, and we're going to get better at using it as we utilize it. And we're really excited about the future of being able to give this information to our players, to the parents, and then obviously, hopefully down the road, it's going to help them create relationships, not only within their teammates, but also potentially with colleges, professionals, whatever it may be. Yeah. So thanks again for coming on.
Well, 2 things. Thank you for having us on. And number 2, thank you for your commitment to your players and developing them. You're a player-centric model, and it's really clear that you want the best for them. And, thank you for that.
No problem.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Dr. John. Thanks, Doug. We appreciate it. Take care.
Yes, sir.